Hey there, and welcome to this video. We're going to learn how to build your own entire JavaScript front-end framework from scratch. So we're going to design a simple React framework. We are going to have our own useState hook, useEffect, useState, components, and other stuff like that. Every important thing about React, you're going to add it here in this framework that we're going to be building. Then later on, I'm going to teach you how to use the framework we've built to create your own simple to-do app. So here it is. You can create a to-do like let's say this. You can add another one, and another one. So we're going to use the framework that we have created to build this to-do app. Okay, so I've called the framework SimpleReact. Basically, we have to create just 3 files. The index.html, four files. Index.html, that will be the landing page, like the first endpoint of this framework. Then everything else will be rendered in this root div. Then we're going to set up this framework.js that contains every core files of our framework. Then this app.js is where we actually write our code. Then just a simple styling file. So let me just create this from scratch again. I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna close everything here. I'm gonna create another folder and call it new. And inside this folder, I'm gonna add an index.html file, and I also want a style.css file. I want a framework. Let me see what I'm gonna framework. Wait, no. Let me just delete this first. I want another file. Just call it app.js. Then I want the framework.js. So before I proceed, I have to talk about something first. I'm pretty sure if you don't know how React works, it's gonna be hard to understand this, but I'm gonna try to explain everything in deep, and I'm gonna assume that you don't know. So basically, while building this framework, I had an option to use a transpiler. Now I didn't want to use a transpiler like Bubble, because React uses a transpiler like uses Bubble to transpile its code, because here I built a simple weird templating engine. It's really weird, but the main purpose of this course is for you to understand how you could go along building your own framework, understanding advanced JavaScript concepts and stuff like that, and not reusing stuff. So I did not want to use a transpiler because transpilers do not work in most browsers. Plus, I did not want to use import statements. That's why you haven't seen any import statement anywhere. So because ES7 module in JavaScript do not apply in some browsers. So pretty much sure that some of you wouldn't be able to learn this framework. So as it is right now, it can learn anywhere, right? You just have to have a JavaScript engine, which every browser has. So in the HTML file, the first thing I want to do is very simple, basic stuff. Just create a HTML template like this. Just use the VS Code shortcut. I'm gonna call it SimpleReact, right? Then here, just want to create a simple div with a ID of root. I'm gonna just say root like that. Then I'm gonna create a script tag of framework.js. Then a script tag what's happening, of source of app.js. So make sure that the framework.js is above the app.js, because how this script tag works, if you call it here, that basically means that it's the same like like just lighting the JavaScript code here. So we want the framework code, core framework files to be a variable to this app.js. So if you put the app.js above, it won't be a variable to the app itself, because you have declared some variables below it. So just make sure that the framework is on top of the app.js. Then after that, just gonna simply link the CSS here. Just link it. CSS, just gonna call it style, yeah, like that. Just gonna copy the one I did before. Just gonna open this, copy everything, and paste. Because the main focus of this tutorial is not the CSS, it's simply the framework itself. So you can just copy. I'm gonna link this code to a GitHub repository, so you can just go there and follow along. Okay. So now what I want to do before I do anything, I want to explain how React works. So in React, there are a few concepts, like let's say, let me do this. Let's say, or a concept like right. Let me go in a framework with JS. Okay, right here. Okay, I want to do this. So you have a useState hook and a useEffect hook, and these two hooks have different works. A useState hook is for defining the state of a variable, so it's like for defining the variables. And the useEffect hook is for running something whenever a component loads. So whenever something changes, you have to run a callback. So whenever like a count is updated, you have to run a certain function. You see, certain function. You have to run a certain function. So I'm gonna show you this in my framework. So the first thing I want to do, I want to create a variable, const simple site, like that, and I'm gonna do something that is very weird. So I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna give it an expression. So basically, a variable requires an expression. So and it requires an expression or a value that leads to, or I mean that a variable requires a value or an expression. So this expression here, we're going just to pass a simple anonymous function. I'm gonna say like that. I don't want the function name, so just like this. Don't want any parameters, so like that. Then I'm gonna immediately call this function here. So this is pretty weird, but it's just basic JavaScript stuff. So this function will be called immediately, and inside this simple site block, I'm gonna define all this useState hook, useEffect hook, and all other kind of stuff that we need for the framework. So first of all, I'm just gonna create some few functions. We're just gonna need 5 functions. So I'm just gonna say function useState. useState, right? Shit. Okay. Then below it, I'm gonna define another function, useEffect. Then I'm gonna define a function called JSX that we're going to use to define our templates. JSX, like that. Then I'll need another function here. I'm gonna call it create element. I'm going to use this to create the actual DOM elements. Then I'm gonna need the last function here. I'm gonna call it function render, for actually rendering the actual app. So you're just gonna need these few functions. Then in the end here, we're just gonna return these functions in a variable. Just gonna say this return. So this return these functions. So I'm going to return useState, useEffect, JSX, create element, and render. Right? Then I'm just gonna say const this. I'm gonna destructure this variable. Just copy it here, like that. Should be equal to simple site, like that. So I'm just gonna destructure it. So this value, this array of this value is going to be equal to this everything here. So now we have to actually define the useState. So useState, the first thing we want to define. Okay, so the first thing I want to do before proceeding, I will need a variable, an array called states, to store the states, and I'm going to need a state index to store the state index, the index of the current state that we are in. Okay, like that. And the useState function is going to be accepting one particular parameter, the initial value. Inside of this useState function, we are going to just simply define some few values inside here. I'm going to define a current index. I'm going to say const current index, like that. Should be equal to the state index. Then I'm gonna define I'm gonna assign a value to this state. So I'm gonna just say states of position current index should be equal to something. So I want it when there's no value, when it's undefined, we just give it this initial value, and when it's not, we just give it this same value. So I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna say states current index not equal to undefined. If this is true, then what we do, we just simply if it's not equal to undefined, that means it's there, so it's defined. So just give it back its value. We don't change anything. Value like that. I'm gonna say current index. Then if it's undefined, we just pass in the initial value, like that. Then the next thing I want to do, I want to create a function to handle the set state. So in React, when you define a value, you're going to say const maybe name and a function to change this name. So this is the function we're going to use to change this name, when it's going to be equal to like useState. So I want to keep this same structure, so I'm just going to create this function, a function to handle this function here. So I'm just going to say call it function set state, like that, and it's going to be receiving the new state. So we're just gonna simply pass in the new state here. Gonna say new, the new value. Okay, and what we do is very simple. Just change the array. Just gonna say set state position current index should be equal to new value. Then I'm just gonna simply re-render the whole application. So I haven't yet done anything with this function, but I'm going to do it later. It's here, render function. So just stick with me. Plus, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. I'll be making so many other videos like this. So don't forget to subscribe. Then I'm just gonna simply, outside of this function here, return something. I'm gonna return an array that contains the actual state, okay, of current index in the set state function, okay, like that. So we're pretty much done with useState hook. So the next thing I want to create is the useEffect. So before creating the useEffect, we actually need two things: a variable called effects to handle all the effects like we did in the useState, and the effect index. So I'm just going to say effect index like that. Okay. Then this useState, useEffect hook receives two things. So simply what a useState is, for those who don't know, in React we use this to change some stuff. So it takes, a useEffect, it takes in a callback function, maybe a function, and some dependencies that will determine when to call this function. So if you pass in the name, whenever this name variable changes, this callback will be called. So that's how your useState is. So if you pass in nothing, whenever this component is being loaded, we're going to call this callback function. So I want to keep that structure, just like in React. Okay, so I'm just going to say here, callback and the dependencies array, because it's going to be an array. So after that, I'm just going to do something that is very simple. Above here, we're just going to say, let me use a const, say all dependencies. So the dependencies that were there before, dependencies, if I can spell that correctly, should be equal to the effects of position effect index, right? Then we're going to define a variable called has changed that is going to keep track if the dependency has changed or not, or not, has changed, okay, going to be equal to true by default. Below here we're going to say if the dependencies has changed, we just simply run the callback, okay, like that. So how do we know that the dependency has changed? Because we just gave it an initial value by default. So how do we know that they have changed? They've actually changed. So what we do, we're gonna say if there's all dependencies, okay. So if all dependencies exist, so we have to be sure of that first. Just gonna say has changed should be equal to some weird function here. So it's gonna be dependencies that we have passed in right now dot sum, that is going to keep track of the dependency itself and its index. Then we're just gonna do this. I will explain what this does in a moment. Let me just write it first. Not object dot is the dependency that you are tracking, and the old dependencies of the value of the index, like that. So what this function does here, okay, so the sum function just compares two arrays, something like that. It compares the values inside two arrays. And the object dot is, what it does, suppose we have a null value or a -0 or something weird like that, something else related to stuff like this. Okay, so while we're comparing these two arrays, the arrays of the old dependency and the new dependencies, it's going to give us some errors. So we want to make sure that these values are well maintained and managed. So we're going to use object.is to do that. So this is it. If you don't understand these two functions here, you can just go and Google them. They're just simple JavaScript. So after that, the next thing I want to do is, after I've finished to handle the change, just have to simply just assign the new dependencies to the effects array, like that. Effects index dependencies, okay. Then I'm gonna just increment the effect index. Yeah, so now let's move on to the next function that we're going to need, this JSX function. Okay, so this does not take any Okay, it takes a few parameters. Okay, so we're going to pass in the actual element here. If I open the wait, no, not this. Just want to show you the one that I already did build. Okay, so the JSX, okay, you pass in the name of the tag, then it renders it. You can pass in the class name and the value. You can pass in an event, a function, so stuff like that. So it should receive all these things. So it's going to receive first the tag of the element that we want to render. Then going to receive props, so some sort of props. Then after that, just receive children. So in the cases where we want to nest something, like what you've seen here before, what is it? So you can see that there's a JSX function, and we have nested all these values, all these other JSX function inside of it. So that's how it's going to be working, this engine, templating engine. Okay, it's weird, but it works. I do not want to use a transpiler. So if you want to avoid using a transpiler, that's the only way, I think. Okay, so after we passed in these values, it's very simple. So this function only does one thing. It just returns an object like this. It returns an object that has the tags, props, property of props, value of props, and the children, just like that. And here you have to make sure that it's not empty. So if it's empty, we just return a simple object, so like that. But what if we pass in a component? So here it will just work for simple tags. What if I want to pass in a component? So I'm just gonna say if the type of the tag is a function. So if we have passed in a function as a component, is a function, want to do something different, just have to return the tags, I mean the props and the children, not the tag this time, because the tags will be already defined in the function, in the component. So just the children, like that. So this is pretty much it for this function. So the next function we're going to create is the create element. So this is where everything happens. Pretty much this is the engine of this all. So I'm just gonna explain this very well so you can understand how this framework works. So after we've created this JSX here, we have to pass in the node to the create element function. So this is going to be receiving the node like that. And the first thing you have to do, you have to check if the node is a string or not. So let's say this app component returned nothing. Or let's say this counter component here just returned a string, a simple string instead of this JSX function. So if it returned a string or a number, what we want to do is very simple. So I'm just gonna say if type of node node is equal to string, right? Or type of node what happened? Type of the node is equal to a number. We just have to do this very simple stuff. We're just gonna return the document.create text node. So this is just a normal JavaScript DOM manipulation function. So I'm just gonna say return document.create text node. Okay, of what? So of the value. So just gonna make sure that it's a string in case of the numbers. Okay, here I missed a. Alright, so that's it for the string and numbers. So what if they're not a string or number? So what if they're not a string or number? just gonna say const element should be equal to document dot create element. What element are we creating? The node that we have passed in dot the tag. Remember this JSX returns an object, so we're just gonna go and take in the tag. Okay, so we're just gonna create this element. Then after that, so that now the element is created. How do we handle this other stuff here? So now we're going to create a loop to loop through the props and figure out what these props are. So this is very simple. Okay, just gonna say for create a variable rate name value of object dot entries, okay, of the node dot props. So we're going to loop through this. So the first thing I want to check if I want to handle events. So how do we pass events in our framework? So it's very simple. Like here, I said an on click event. So I passed the props object and said on click. So on click, this will just say hello. So how I handle this is very simple. Okay, so I'm just gonna check if a prop starts with the word on, and if it does, just assign this click the other part to a event listener. So we're gonna do it like this. I'm just gonna say if the name dot starts with on, right, and the value is a function, okay, and the type of value is equal to function, okay, not declaring it, is equal to a function. You just have to do this very simple task here. You're gonna say element, the element that we are looping through, dot add event listener, right? And I'm gonna pass in the other part of this. I want to get this instead of the only click. I want to get the click. So if it's on place, on change, on submit, so I just want to get the other part of it. So I'm just gonna say the name of the prop that I've passed in dot slice the first two words, because the first two words are just on, okay, and I'm gonna make sure that they are lowercase. I'm just gonna say two lowercase like that. And then I'm gonna just learn the value because the value is a function. So up to this stage we have already handled the events. So what if I want to pass in a class name, like what I did here? So I want to pass in a class name, like, so I want this to be a class, to have a class name of new. So how do I do that? I want just to check. So else if name, okay, name is equal to class name, right? Class name, right? I want to just simply add this class name to the element. I'm just gonna say element, what did I write here? Element dot class name at the value, right? I'm just gonna do the same for the ID. So just else if the name of the prop is equal to ID, just gonna simply say element, okay, just have to remove this, element dot ID should be equal to the value. And then what if it's just a normal attribute, like let's say a placeholder or something like that, you see? So if it's a placeholder or any other attribute, like I think in the to-do app I used something like this. Let me just show you. You can see here I passed in a placeholder. You can see them changed. So what if I want to pass like value, yeah, all these other attributes that are not class name or ID? So I just have to handle this differently. So I'm gonna say this is going to be very simple. Just gonna say else, just do this element dot set attribute, right? The attribute should be the name and the value. Okay, so that's it for the plot. So the next thing I want to handle the child component, the child part. Okay, so how do I handle the child part? So I'm just gonna create another loop to loop through the children. Okay, for I'm gonna say let child of node dot children and dot flat. So what this flat function does, it just takes in all the child. Like if you see here, we have multiple childs. Takes all. What if this? Yeah. So we have children here of this JSX function, and this the JSX function takes in a counter with other children in it. You see? What if I pass in a child, another child here, and it goes on like that? So I just want to grab everything and put it in an array. So that's what this flat function does. Then I'm just gonna loop it. So the first thing I have to do is very simple. If the child is just a normal text, just gonna create a text node like we did before. So if type of child is equal to string, or type of child is equal to a number, we do the same thing we did here. So just gonna say element dot append child. We append it now. Append child. What are we appending? We're appending the document dot create text node of the child, but we want it to be a string, so I'm just gonna say string here like that. So that is it. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, so in cases that it's not a child, so it's another JSX function, just gonna append, you say element dot append child. What are we appending? We're appending the create element function. So this is recursion here. If you don't know what recursion is, just simple Google it. Okay, let me just explain simply recursion. So if the node that we have passed in the children is not a string, we're just gonna run this exactly same function that we are creating here. So it's a sort of a loop. So this gonna run the same function. It goes like this. So if it's not a string, the children is not a string, so it's maybe another JSX function like we saw here. See, so this function runs the create element. So it comes here, it checks that is this children a string or a number. So it's not, because these are functions. So if they are functions, we're just gonna rerun the create element on this, and this again comes to check is this children a function. So it's not a function, it's a string. So we just create this text node. So this goes on like that. So even here, even if I had like another function here, it will just work the same. So the first function checks, is this a string or a function? So is this children here a string or a function? So if it's a string, in this case, we just create the text node. If it's not, in this other case, we rerun the same function and enter the child create element function. So some sort of a weird loop. Okay, and after that I'm just going to return the element. I'm just going to say return the element like that. Okay, now the last function I want to deal with is the render function. So this actually renders everything else. So the first thing I want to do, I want to clear to reset the state index in the effect index. like that. We set it, then we grab the root element in our HTML, so like that. So we just say const root should be equal to document dot get element by id of root, like that. And then I'm just gonna clear everything inside of it. You're just gonna root dot inner HTML is equal to empty, an empty string. Then I'm gonna say const app should be equal to the app function that we're going to create in our app.js. Then I'm just gonna say root dot append child. We're appending the create element function again. Then we're passing it the node that is app. So like that. Now that we have finally created everything that we need for the framework, the next thing we're going to do is actually test it out in the app.js file, not this one, the one that we are using. Okay, so just gonna use it here. So pretty much so far we have just defined everything that we need, like all the stuff that we need, like that. So now we want just to simply try out the framework before using it to build a to-do app. Just simple tryout. Like, so how do you use this framework? Okay, so the first thing that we need to do, we need to create a function, the app function, call it app, like that. Then we're going to return something. We're going to return the JSX, pass in the tag, maybe a h1, attributes of null. I don't want anything. Maybe just want a class name or something. Let me say class name should be equal to something like new JS framework, whatever you want, doesn't matter. Then I'm gonna pass in the text of this HTML h1. So I'm gonna say SimpleReact. So let's see if this works. So it did not work. So yeah, I forgot to render. You have to render the application. So you can see SimpleReact. I have a typo there. SimpleReact. So we have successfully injected this HTML element with a class of new to the body, to the document element, something like that. So we just used our framework to create this text. So let me try out the useState now. So I'm gonna create a state. I'm gonna say, let me just use the snippet. What is useState snippets? useState text, like that. Plus I don't want this to be like this. Just wanna, okay, set it to an empty. So this is how we create a useState to a framework, just like in React. Okay, and now what I want to do is, instead of rendering this here, just have to remove this and do this, render a div, pass in the value of null, then pass in the actual children. So the children is going to be another JSX. Okay, so I'm gonna say here I want a button, I want a p tag. Okay, a p tag, then it should be null, the attribute. I don't want any attributes. Then the value should be just simply the text. Then I want another JSX. Let me just close it. here, JSX here, with the value of a button. Should receive an on click that when it's clicked, should just simply set text to this is touch, right? So let us see if this works. Okay, so I removed the first h1, so I'm just gonna add it here real quick. Say h1 null. Why do I keep typing it like this? React. Then just close it, so like that. So SimpleReact. Yeah, plus I did not define the value for the button, so just gonna do click me. Okay, so that's the value for the button. So you can see click me. So once I click it, you see this is touch. So that pretty much worked. Next thing I want to try out is the useEffect. So I'm just gonna create a simple useEffect here. useEffect, right? That takes in a callback function and a dependency of an empty array. So I want this to run when the component loads. So just immediately after the HTML, the application is loaded. So I'm just gonna say here console.log hello world, like that. Okay, so there is a problem. What is it? Yeah, so I forgot to put a comma here. Okay, so once I click it, you see just right after we wrote the application, you can see all hello world. You see hello world, right? So that's how we do it. Now I want to add in a component, so I'm gonna add in a component here. So above here, let me just do this, and we can create another function. Call it count. It takes in a prop of start, and it returns. So I'm gonna first have to render it here. I'm gonna say JSX. Okay, the count, and I should pass in the props. So start is 0, like that. Then here I'm going to return the JSX as well, and should be a div, a value null, attribute of null, and the values inside of it should be these other JSX. So I'm just gonna add in a button, with the attribute of on click, whatever you write it. Even if you use a capital C or a small c, it still works, because I made sure that they are all lower cases once they reach the create element function in the framework. So just gonna do this simply. Just have to do something here once this is clicked. So I want to create, before doing this I have to create first a state. Okay, shit, what did I do? So let me just leave this and say const count set count should be equal to useState. It should start with the start variable that we have passed in as a prop here. So now I want to on click to change this count. So I'm just gonna say on click set count to count +1, like that. Then I'm just gonna do something else here. Let's see if this works first. Okay, so I did not pass in the value of the button again. So count, okay. So I want this to be like count and the count itself. So just gonna do this. Let me use this. I'm gonna say count is okay, like that. So count is 0, count is 1, count is 2, count is 3. So it works just like how it would in React. So that's it. We have created a component, a useState hook, a useEffect hook, rendered out some HTML with our custom HTML engine, rendering engine. So pretty much this framework is very simple, considering we have just written about 90 lines of code to create it. So in 90 lines of code, we created a simple JavaScript framework that handles all this stuff. So the next thing, I want us to I'm not going to write out all this the to-do app itself, because I'm kind of tired. So I'm just gonna paste it here and explain it to you, everything that's happening. So this is the to-do app. So if I open it now, you can see the to-do app. So I can write something, you see, like that. You can toggle the to-do and all this kind of stuff, and you can see the actual to-do here. Once I add the to-do, I cancel log it. So yeah, see, this is the new to-do. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so back to the code. Okay, so basically we have two components. So the app itself takes in the to-do app component. So it takes in the to-do app component as a div. So first we create a div inside of it. Let me show you in the so this is the loop. Then we create a div. Then inside of the div we add in the to-do app. So this is how we do it, and pass in a props object of null. Then inside the to-do app, what we simply do is we set we create a useState of a type array of the to-dos that we're going to store the to-do. So this is like a simple database for our to-dos. Then you're going to create a variable for the new to-do to store the new to-do. Then we have a function that adds a to-do to the to-dos array. So just simply set to-dos like that. So it structures the initial value that were there before, then pass in a new object that is a new to-do of property ID date.now text new to-do that we have set here, completed false, and we set new to-do to a string. We reset it, so like that. Then we have a function toggle to do. This just handles the toggle property, because when I click this to do, just toggles it to completed. You can see, let me try to open the actual to do app. It simply just adds a class list. Where is the to do? Okay, to do list. Okay, so you can see if I click edge, okay, so it just closes itself. If I open the values that are toggled, you can see, so these ones have completed, have the class name completed added to it, because I clicked them. You can see these three, I clicked them, they have that class. So it's like that. So we simply just set to do to completed. We mapped through the to do, then find the to do that has the ID that we have received, then set completed to completed. And if completed, where is it? Here in the to do item. So if the to do dot completed is completed, we just add the completed, else we add an empty string. So this component is where the toggle to do is added. So we can see we passed in this toggle to do function from the to do app. See here in the to do app, we passed in the toggle to do. So that's how this works. So there's so much stuff going on here. You can just go to the description down below and open the GitHub repo and see this code. You can play around with it. I can even try to maybe add something to it and post it back right there, because it's just there. It's like an open source weird JavaScript framework. You can do whatever you want with it. Yeah, but pretty much this is everything we need to do to create this to-do app. Everything we need to do to create a to-do app, right? Rhymes. So that's it, just like that. You can use JavaScript to do a bunch of stuff, including this one. So this was very easy. I hope you enjoyed learning this stuff. I learned a lot because I had to like research, figure a way to do this kind of stuff, build this or weird stuff here. And plus I added all these comments on the framework.js so that you can, once you go to open the file, you can read out through this comment and understand what was going on. So I had to learn a lot of stuff, like whatever. I don't know what this create text node was, so I had to go to the MDN reference and read it out. So now I know. So just remember to challenge yourself. Okay. Plus I will post in another video like this. I'm gonna go ahead and build it and improve this this framework, add some new stuff to it, like add a bunch of complicated stuff to it, make sure it works, then come back and build something bigger and better with it, and I'm gonna explain it to you. I'm gonna teach you to how to build another better framework. So just don't forget to subscribe and be in touch. This is Touch.